Hello, this is the Death Row and Executions channel. I'm Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover recent crimes and convictions. There will be a link for that as well. Before I move on to discussing the next upcoming execution case, I want to take a couple minutes to try to answer a question that I keep seeing. In many comments on my content and others on the internet and social media, especially from many that are living overseas in other countries, asking why the death penalty is so inconsistent in the United States. Why some murderers get it and others don't in death penalty states for the same exact type of crime. Take this person here, for example. This is Sean Vincent Gillis. He is a serial killer. He brutally murdered at least 8 women in Louisiana from 1994 until he was arrested in 2004 in Louisiana. Yet, he was sentenced to life without parole, not death. Why? Remember that following a conviction of guilty by a jury, the trial then goes to the penalty phase. And that same jury that found him guilty must now decide his fate, his punishment. As it turns out, the jury for Gillis had at least one juror. They may have been more than one, but at least one that may have been opposed to the death penalty in this case for some reason and refused to vote along with the others to sentence Gillis to death. If I'm not mistaken, a decision for the death sentence in Louisiana at the time must be unanimous. Unanimous. All 12 jurors must agree. And that did not happen. They were hung, deadlocked, which automatically results in a life sentence. So there you have one answer as to why some get it and some don't. There is also the question of whether race has something to do with it. Sean Gillis is a white man. If the 1 or 2 jurors holding out against the death penalty had a black man as the accused, would they have voted differently? We don't know. What we do know is how statistically the population of blacks in the United States is roughly about 13%. That means about 87% of the rest of the country are other races, mostly white, of course. Just 13% are black. Out of every 100 persons living in the United States, only about 13 are black. Yet almost 50% of inmates on death row are black. That's incredible. How can such a small percentage of the population represent half, almost a full half, on death row? How do you explain that? Now, I don't want to hear crap about how their race has more of a propensity towards violence. That's bullcrap. A propensity towards violence exists among people of all races. No, it would be ridiculous to think that, and possibly quite racist. I think we need to look more at how 1 or 2 individuals on a jury would have voted depending on the color of skin of the guilty party. There is where the problem possibly lies. Just one more thing. Another big question that gets asked many, many times in every video that I have done is, why does it take so long, so many years, from the time of conviction until the execution is carried out? I can answer that question with just one word: appeals. Now let's talk about the next case. Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson was born in November of 1962 in the state of Washington, where he lived most of his early life. He is now 62 years old. He is a former Army veteran who fought in the Gulf War during Operation Desert Storm, which took place between August 1990 and February 1991, when Hutchinson was 29 years old. He was a paratrooper and Army Ranger. So there is at least one good thing we can say about him. He fought for our country. Hutchinson's lawyers argued at his trial that Hutchinson returned from war severely mentally disturbed, that he was suffering from Gulf War syndrome. They also added that he became an alcoholic because of it. And while those opposed to the execution of Jeffrey Hutchinson want to use that as an excuse, there is also the argument that thousands upon thousands of soldiers return from wars back to this country with severe cases of PTSD and other mental problems and don't turn into brutal murderers. How many soldiers that returned from the Gulf War later killed an entire family that included young children? Just 7 years after returning from the Gulf War, Hutchinson killed his 32-year-old girlfriend, Renee Flaherty, who he was living with, and her 3 children, Jeffrey, who was 9 years old, a 7-year-old girl named Amanda, and a boy named Logan, who was only 4 years old. So 4 murders in total. Now, for some reason, he was sentenced to life for the murder of his girlfriend, but he did receive 3 death sentences for the murders of the 3 children. Jeffrey Hutchinson had married before he went off to war, and soon after his return, he divorced. He had a son who was born in 1986. That child was 12 years old when Hutchinson was arrested in 1998. I'm not sure if that boy was from one of his marriages. His name is also Jeffrey, but spelled differently. And coincidentally, that is also the name of Renee's 9-year-old son, who was one of the 4 victims. This, of course, is a more recent image of Jeffrey Hutchinson's son. After his failed marriage, after returning from war, Hutchinson then married a second time, but that marriage also didn't last long. While still in the state of Washington, Hutchinson then got together with a woman around the year 1997, about a year before the murders. Her name was Renee Flaherty, a single mother of 3 children. Renee was also born and raised in Washington. Renee actually worked as a truck driver after finishing high school, but later married and moved to an area near the city of Spokane, where she had split up from her husband, and some years later she met Jeffrey Hutchinson. Renee and Hutchinson soon began living together, and Renee began working for the United States Postal Service in Spokane. Sometime around that year of 1997, Renee was offered a better job opportunity with the post office in Niceville, Florida, and together they all moved from Spokane to Crestview, Florida, a short distance from Niceville, where Renee was now a postal worker there. But the relationship was very rocky and tumultuous, and there was apparently constant arguing and bickering and fighting. On September 11 of the year 1998, Hutchinson and Renee had a huge argument, and Hutchinson packed up some of his things and his guns, loaded it all in the trunk, and then drove to a bar where he had some drinks and told the bartender about how pissed off he was at his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Renee called a friend she had in the state of Washington by the name of Frances Pruitt and discussed with her the huge fight she just had with Hutchinson. Renee told Frances that it looks like Jeffrey, quote, has left for good, unquote. He will not be returning. But Hutchinson did later return to the house after leaving the bar, and while using a Mossberg 12-gauge pistol-gripped shotgun, he shot and killed Renee. He then did the same with all 3 of her children, ages 9, 7, and 4. I don't care how messed up somebody returns from war. Doing that to 3 innocent children that young is not acceptable. There's just no excuse for it. Well, Hutchinson then calmly picked up a telephone, called 911, and told the dispatcher that he just killed everyone in the family. Police arrived and he was arrested and taken to the Okaloosa County Jail. Now listen to this, because this is actually quite funny. Hutchinson was originally scheduled to go on trial in June of the year 2000, about 2 years after the crime, having been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. Hutchinson fired his 2 lawyers and notified the court that he will be representing himself as his own lawyer, and he will be putting on a defense of being mentally insane. Did you catch that? He has the brain to act as his own lawyer in court and say the murders occurred because he is mentally insane. I hate to say it, but I actually let out a laugh when I read that part. Anyway, at some point, Hutchinson must have also realized how ridiculous that decision was, and he did request lawyers to help try his case. However, the trial was delayed again because the lead prosecutor suffered some health issues, and the trial finally began in January of the year 2001. And now get this. Even though Hutchinson had called police and told them that he killed his family and gave a full confession and all the forensic evidence, his gun found in the house, all the evidence pointed directly at him, at his trial, he now said that there were 2 men wearing ski masks that barged into the house and attacked his girlfriend. He said he ended up struggling with the intruders and became incapacitated. The intruders then shot and killed Renee and her 3 young ones, and then they fled from the house. Then, during trial, he changed his story again. Hutchinson stated that he was heavily intoxicated with alcohol at the time and that it was not first-degree murder because it was a crime of passion. A crime of passion? There must be provocation on the part of the person killed for it to be a crime of passion. Provocation? That means the person did something to get the killer so wound up that he suddenly went into a fit of rage and snapped and started killing. Okay, I can see that possibly happening with the girlfriend. And maybe that's why Hutchinson got a life sentence for her murder. But how in the world can you justify any provocation coming from a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, or a 4-year-old? And there's more to his changing stories. In 2022, just a few years ago, while sitting on death row, Hutchinson filed an appeal declaring that he didn't kill anybody and that he was framed. That appeal did not go well for him. This month, on April 1st of this year, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the death warrant for Jeffrey Hutchinson, scheduling him to be put to death on May 1st, 2025. As I mentioned earlier, Renee Flaherty was born in the state of Washington. She and her siblings attended local schools and graduated from Fife High School. After high school, Renee became a truck driver and, like I said, later worked for the post office. Renee and her 3 children were transported back to the state of Washington, where they were buried. Please remember to hit the subscribe button for more death row and upcoming execution stories so that you're alerted when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Take care and bye for now.